EdTech Mondays Kenya is supported by the MasterCard Foundation Center for Innovative Teaching and Learning in partnership with EdTech East Africa.
Good evening and karibuni to EdTech Mondays. I'm your moderator, Lily Bakala Piper, and thank you for joining us today. East Africa has experienced a series of emergencies in the last 5 years that has created both the demand and supply for educating students in a crisis. The necessity to be able to continue learning during a global pandemic, or despite flood damage, or even during political protests, has led to the use of traditional technology like radio and TV and new digital tools to serve learners, teachers, and families. During April and May of 2024, excessive flooding created chaos for communities across Kenya. And once again, one of the hardest hit communities were our students. The Ministry of Education reported that flooding destroyed 62 schools, leaving an estimated 15,000 learners without a place to learn. And for the last 2 months, political protests in Kenya have caused disruptions in schools, learning, and exam schedules. So it begs the question, how are schools responding to these educational crises? What are the digital tools they're using? And what gaps remain? And what are the success stories from schools in implementing EdTech during a crisis? These are the very important questions that we'll be exploring today, and we're pleased to have 2 wonderful experts to join us to talk about this important topic. Before we introduce them, however, I'd like to invite you to join the conversation. You can join us on X at EdTechEAfrica, and on SMS, you can text your feedback to 20686 using the hashtag EdTechMondays. Before we hear from our experts here in the studio, let us have a look at a series of conversations we had recently with teachers and administrative staff at Kids Zone Educational Center to learn about their emergency preparedness and how they have addressed recent emergencies using EdTech.
So Kids Zone was amongst the pilot schools for the CBC system of education back in 2017. So the government selected us amongst the 470 schools in Kenya to pilot on the new system of education. So that's when our journey on CBC began. And as we were introduced even to the curriculum, which was very new to the country at that time, and nobody actually had experienced even the materials. We learned that one of the core competencies that had really been emphasized upon was digital literacy. And that's when our journey began. And we realized that for CBC to be effective and successful, then you cannot do without digital literacy. And especially now in the 21st century, technology is very, very important in learning.
As you were integrating these tech tools, because they're so broad, from software to the actual hardware that the students are using, what were the barriers that you had to mitigate in order to really get buy-in from all of your stakeholders?
Wow. Of course, the aspect of cost, because it's not cheap. Back then, a gadget would go for about 22,000 shillings. I think currently it's about 27,000 shillings. So that is pricey. Even to the parent, it's high. So the aspect of cost. Even investing in Wi-Fi. I remember back in 2017, even the big telecoms that we have, they didn't have fiber or optic around the school because we are in a more rural urban setup. And we got Jamit Telecom to offer Wi-Fi at that time. So even just putting the infrastructure for the Wi-Fi in all our classrooms, that was quite a barrier. The other major one, you'll not believe this, was resistance. Yeah, resistance from parents, even the teachers. I think the only people who were not resisting were the learners themselves. They were quite excited about the idea.
So we've heard from Mrs. Maura about the pretty incredible integration Kids Zone has had with EdTech tools over the last many years. Tell me, as a teacher, how did you adapt your teaching methods to include educational technology?
I would say as a teacher, first I was trained using the traditional methods. There's nowhere that I was told that I can use technology to facilitate learning, but I would say where I stand or where I am at, I've now come to know that it's not a must for the learners to be in class physically. I as well can have my class with my learners at the comfort of their home. For me, I actually prefer online in that you engage learners more than in class. They are very attentive, they ask questions because they are eager to see the next thing that you'll be doing in the class.
And in terms of assessments and feedback, I'm just imagining Teacher Mary with her students in Kiswahili class. They're learning new concepts, new vocabulary, and now it's time to assess them or give them feedback on their progress. How has that been with EdTech tools? How have you managed that?
Using EdTech tools, we administer assignments and also questions one-on-one during the lesson, and learners are able to answer the questions, whereby you project the activity to the learners. They take screenshots and send back the activity. That is immediate. Other times now when you want to give a homework, you type your homework and send it to the Google Classroom. In terms of assessment, you also administer assessment using the Google Classroom. We mark and also give the learners feedback of their performance. Yeah.
And finally, just as before we let you go, what would you say to other teachers or parents or schools that are need to integrate EdTech more, but are maybe in that resistance space, still trying to figure out how to do it? What would you say to them?
I would say it takes some time, some courage, for you to become learn the skill. It becomes very easy, and teaching becomes fantastic or fun for you as a facilitator.
And finally, what would you say has been the biggest benefit of the integration of EdTech into your school curriculum and practice? What are you seeing now, 5-6 years later after the start of your program, that you would say this is a success story for us?
Oh, it is. It's surely a success story. And I would say that learning has not been disrupted by the events that have happened. If we look back in 2020, when schools were completely shut down, do you know we didn't close down our school? We were able to sustain our staff for all those months because learning continued every other day to the end of that year. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing with us about KidZone. It's really a wonderful story, an inspiring story to see how EdTech can be a support, not just in emergencies, but on any given day. So thank you for being with us today.
Thank you for having me. Yeah.
Such important highlights from KidZone. Coming back to studio, let me welcome Adane and Alexia with us, who are here to talk about this very important topic. Adane, Alexia, welcome. Please introduce yourself and your organization and tell us a little bit about the work that you're doing. Let's start with Alexia. How about that?
Yes, so my name is Alexia Sahara. I work with Snaplify Digital Education Company. We are an EdTech company headquartered in South Africa, but we have worked in 7 countries, which of course includes Kenya. So part of the work we do is that we make education accessible to learners across all boards, that is from primary school, secondary school, TVET colleges, and even universities. We also do work with teachers in terms of helping teachers build on their digital literacy skills through our platform and being able to create digital content and resources that they can use in their daily teaching pedagogies. Thank you.
Welcome, Alexia.
Hi, my name is Adan. I am the Senior Technical Advisor for the IRC and working out of Kenya, Nairobi. I work for the IRC and we're present in most of the Sub-Saharan Africa, Latin America, and Middle East. And we do education, health, protection work across the globe.
Great.
Pleasure to be here.
Very glad to have you both here. This is such an important conversation that we will not solve any of the problems in one conversation, but such an important time for us to engage really in an intentional way around how we're addressing the needs of students during a crisis. So let me ask you both, and we'll ask Alexia to start first. What are the EdTech's tools that you're seeing being used that have really been effective during educational emergencies? Alexia?
Okay, so during the COVID-19 pandemic, I think one of the EdTech tools that really stood out was radio and also television. But we have EdTech companies like Snaplify who also provided content to schools. These EdTech solutions provided different kind of engagement depending on the student level capacity, and also most of them were accessible in different regions. So you find that urban centers, the schools were able to embrace technologies as the tools, apps, and different other form of engagement. But in rural areas, because of lack of infrastructure and lack of capacity, they used the simple method, which is the radio and definitely the TVs and even the feature phones, kabambes. Yeah.
What have you seen in recent years, Adan, that has really stuck out to you as effective educational tools?
Yeah, I think the earliest time to go back is during the COVID time, and similar to Alexis, radio was one of the platform that we used, not necessarily in Kenyan context, but in other West African context, and partly due to the availability of radios in multiple households and the easiness of operating radio. We've used radio to reach thousands of children and conduct the day-to-day learning program, even though it may have some challenges with it.
In your experience, what has been the most effective of the EdTech tools that schools have been using in the last several years?
I think apart from radio, because in terms of radio, it's only delivery of content. You cannot be able to track user engagement and other forms of engagement during learning. There has been an upcoming of different solutions also, such as video conferencing platforms. We've also seen EdTech companies come up with different solutions like apps that deliver content. We've seen interactivity of content. We've also seen platforms that even have analytic dashboard that teachers can be able to go and track what exactly the learners have been doing during these specific seasons. Yeah.
From the IRC perspective in particular, what are the communities that you're most concerned about reaching? Where are the communities that you know, if you are not intentional about including them into your planning, they may not be able to access education at all during an emergency?
Yeah, very good question. IRC as an organization always works toward reaching the most forgotten ones or the last mile children because of geographical reason or other reasons, including the crisis. So those children who are, marginalized, children who might be with some kind of disability, but also the girl child, which oftentimes over and over again that we have seen being excluded for different cultural and other reasons. So those are the groups that we often focus on, but most importantly, the people that are marginalized for multiple reasons that might be too long to mention, but more importantly, the girls and the children who are in the last mile children we categorize as.
Were there success stories around educational technology that came from the pandemic that are worth now carrying forward as we think about the flooding or other environmental or political movements that are disrupting schooling for our learners? Alexia, do you want to start?
Yes, so I think before COVID-19, schools were not embracing education technology that much. And during that pandemic time, we got to realize that education does not stop in school. It has to continue even out of school. And this also gave the emergence of different ideas on how we are able to leverage the use of technology in terms of implementing education even when learners are out.
What about from you, Adan? Can you point to some successes and say these are policies or practices or approaches that would serve us well to continue?
Yeah, so I think COVID caught us in a, and when probably most of the world wasn't prepared. And And before then, in terms of being anticipating crisis happening and just being prepared wasn't very common. So at least good thing came out of that incident was like it kind of nudged us to start thinking in terms of anticipatory action, for example, for education. But in terms of scalability of some of the technology, we might still need to collect some evidence in terms of learning, in terms of cost, and there are so many ongoing research that are happening. Hopefully in the coming few months or years, we will learn more, given cost is the biggest driver of in some of these innovations.
Absolutely, which points us to kind of the larger context in which these emergencies happen. They don't happen in isolation, they happen in countries, under governments, under policies that are existing. So let's talk a little bit about what some of the gaps might be.
More importantly, as we move forward, what's really very critical is just gathering also evidence in terms of reaching, using those technology. Not only focusing on the children aspect only, but also the teachers as well as the parents and caregivers, because when we try to approach the challenge systematically from a policy level to the grassroots classroom level. So I think as long as we put our heads together, both government, non-governmental organization, communities, and also innovators, and I think we'll be able to do something meaningful.
Well, let's stay with that question of research for just a moment. And Alexei, I want to hear from you after Adan has a chance to follow up. But what are the questions we should be asking or we're not asking,
In multiple countries that we work, there isn't concrete policy, even policy document or initiative that actually from, the different stakeholders, important key stakeholders, government stakeholders that really spell out what needs to be done in terms of leveraging technology. So that could be a very good starting point. But also knowing that a lot of the people who are targeting or the people that are being affected significantly are the marginalized one. Also collectively as well as government primarily has to take initiative in making sure technology is distributed equally. But at the same time, that's also mean providing low bandwidth access to children, for example, or providing devices for the children and the marginalized communities. In that way, at least with the innovation coming up, if the government with the policy and other resources, backing it up, I think we'll manage to do a lot of work. But in terms of data, we need to know, are children learning using this platform? Learning is critical, right? You may have very fancy technology or low-tech kind of platform, but ultimately what we need is to make sure children are learning, but at the same time they are safe, so that whatever technology we are using also doesn't make them vulnerable. And the other is cost. Cost is very important driver in our work. So it's really important we go for the cost effective, because when you think about scale and sustainability, it's very much has got a one-to-one kind of relationship with cost. Those are some of the information we want to learn.
Yeah. Adana, IRC works a lot in these emergency situations at times where there are sudden disruptions. What are some of the programs that you're seeing successfully integrate girls, those students with disabilities, those who we know may, even in a crisis of the marginalized, might be on the at most risk of not continuing or not coming back or missing out on schooling?
Yes, I think one of the area that we've noticed is, which has been really ingrained in multiple culture, is when an emergency or crisis happen, oftentimes the girl child go through different difficulties, and even during the pandemic we have seen data that are really painful to read, right? But with the education aspect of it, it's mostly about the attitude. So working with community leaders, for example, and working with the government counterparts as well, in making sure inclusion is very well attended, but more importantly, being gender sensitive. But at the same time, you have to challenge also the norms, where oftentimes, especially when children are at home, the girl happen to be the one doing the work at home, so that they may not have enough time to attend even though So the platform might be available, but not having the time to do the schoolwork. So challenging that norm in the culture is one area by engaging the different community leaders, religious leaders, and the gatekeepers that we call them in different government stakeholders, and working collaboratively, we challenge those circumstances and also got positive result out of it. Yeah.
Which really reminds me that when these crises happen, it's not just learning that's affected, the entire environment is. Alexia, let's talk a little bit about teachers. There's no education without our learners, and there's no education without our teachers, who are such a pivotal members of that successful learning for students. So when you are seeing EdTech tools being implemented in crises in particular, what can we do? What should be done to support teachers so that they feel very able to implement these tools?
I think teachers, in a way, for a long time have shied from integrating education technology. And this is not because it's a bad method, but because they lack the relevant skill they need to integrate education technology. So for me, I feel like continuously engaging the teachers, continuously training the teachers, even on their professional development increase, will be able to help in integrating digital learning. EdTech also should not be considered like a replacement of teaching. It is the teachers that make EdTech successful, because they are the ones who now get to draw it down to the learners. So continuously engaging the teachers is one thing that is very, very key. And I can also give an example on that. So through building Snaplify platform and giving access to content, we realized that you cannot be able to integrate digital learning if the teachers do not have skills. So we went ahead to even building like a teacher professional development courses. And then we have a platform where teachers can get resources from other teachers globally. So they can see what teachers in the USA are doing, teachers in South Africa, teachers in Nigeria. They can even take some of those resources and be able to share it with their own students to gauge their capacity. And the beautiful thing also about that is that we have given teachers a chance to build their own content in their capacity and in their level, and they can be able to sell that content as a part-time job. So that's also a motivation.
How can our EdTech tools be made more accessible to those low-income, crisis-affected regions?
Yes, so I also think through partnerships, government working with partners like telcos, different organizations that can be able to build infrastructure to enable EdTech accessibility in these areas is very key. And this can be done if only we put and join our hands together, because if we sit down and wait for these disasters to strike, then it becomes a little bit hard, because during that time everyone is in a panic mode. But it should be a continuous engagement that the government can look into in terms of ensuring that these areas have accessibility to internet. There's electricity, for example. These centers are being built and teachers are being mobilized to continuously engage in education technology.
Thank you for that. We've come to the end of our time. Before we let you go, perhaps in very, very brief, 10 seconds or so, you could just tell us maybe your closing thought.
I think two small points that I want to make is, first is, we should not be waiting until things happen. So there is this thing called anticipatory action for education. We need to be prepared. We need to have contingency plan, given that some of the problems that we see are seasonal, some of the problems that we see are really very common, and it's important to start preparing for those kind of things. And also climate change is one of the biggest challenge that every human being all over the place is facing, and really taking into account those and making sure we are well prepared ahead of time might be really very, very, very helpful. Yeah, these are the things.
Yes, so I think we are in the 21st century, and with or without the crisis and the pandemics, technology is here with us. And it's high time all of us change our mindset in terms of implementation, because it starts with the mindset. When we are all positive, and when I say all, I mean parents, teachers, education stakeholders, even the partners. When everyone comes together and we have a positive mindset towards rolling out and implementing digital education, that it's really gonna be easy. So we'll get from the point of discussing of how we can be able to integrate it during emergencies, but now developing it to bring more success and impact stories, because those are also very key. So let's walk the journey. Let's not shy away from EdTech. Let's embrace it. It's here with us. It's something that it's not going away. Let's just move forward with it.
Thank you both very much for your insights, your expertise, and for being with us today. Asante. We know that ideas to address Kenya's learning resilience challenges are abundant. So we want to tell you about a special opportunity coming up from August 21st to 23rd. Nairobi County Government will be hosting the Innovate Nairobi Tech Week at the University of Nairobi. The event will feature over 50 sessions where you can learn about the EdTech sector in Kenya, and there will be a hackathon where EdTech entrepreneurs, students, and learning leaders will share their ideas to ensure that learning can continue whether or not schools are accessible or not. You can both attend the conference and you can participate in the hackathon. The link is on the screen where you can participate and attend. That's the one thing that you can do today to make a difference for our learners. Don't forget, you can reach us on X at EdTechEAfrica, and on SMS, you can text your feedback to 20686 using the hashtag EdTech Mondays. As always, we're very grateful for the support of Rosa Molo, our sign language interpreter. I'm your moderator, Lily Bakela Piper. Thank you for the privilege of your time, and see you next month.
EdTech Mondays Kenya is supported by the MasterCard Foundation Center for Innovative Teaching and Learning in partnership with EdTech East Africa.